Hey y'all, and welcome to my channel. So this picture came across my Pinterest and I've had it pinned for quite a while, and I decided to go ahead and give it a try. Kind of like the sportiness of the stripes with the tulle skirt. Not quite sure about the see-throughness, but let's see what I can come up with. So I was able to find these Adidas pants. They were $3.99. I may have paid half anyway, less than $4. I looked over in men's at a thrift store, found them. They've been giving them a wash. They've got the perfect 3 lines, and I'm going to try to incorporate the pockets. We'll see how that goes. I also have 2 yards of a black mesh. You can find this usually either with like the special occasion fabric or with like the leisure athletic type fabric. It's got some stretch to it, and it looks a lot like tulle, but it's very soft. And then obviously lining, because I'm lining mine. Nobody needs to see my butt cheeks. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut out here. Now I've measured how long I want my skirt, and it's going to be 32 inches. But what I need to do with these is cut them so that I have some seam allowance on both sides of the pocket, or the stripes, but I also have a pocket here. And I want the amount of black on each side to look the same. So my pocket here, if I say from this stripe, if I go out an inch from this stripe there, that'll give me enough seam allowance. Which is, yeah, that's about a 3/8 inch seam allowance, which is what I normally do, because that allows me to run my presser foot along the edge of the fabric. So I am going to measure down the 32 inches, which I believe, if I start at the top here, yeah, that's to right there. So I have that much left, and there's a cool little zipper. That's actually cool. That's right above where the zipper is. So that's perfect. I'll just cut it off there on both of them, and I'm sure I can use that for something else. Ooh, wouldn't that make cool sleeves? Anyways, the skirt itself is simply 2 rectangles that are gathered. Because of the thinness of the mesh, I'll probably gather it twice. And I'll probably do my hip measurement. So if my hips are 40 inches around, then if I just use the width of the fabric, I think, which is like 60 inches, I can probably do it and just cut 2 rectangles that are the length plus the width of the fabric, and I think that'd be fine. But first, we need to cut this off. I don't care about the logo, obviously, so, and I'm not going to reuse, I don't think I'm going to reuse the waistband at all. But it does have a drawstring, and I might be able to use that for something else. So just for the time being, I'm going to cut right under the waistband. And then I will cut down. And then I will cut starting it, and how you're cutting and stuff is always I think, the hardest part. There we go. So actually that needs to be over the same amount. That needs to be over the inch, not the 3/8. So I need to cut it out to there, like that. All right, so I have the pocket. So now I just need to keep cutting all the way down till I get right above the zipper. And then I'll do the exact same thing on the other side. Okay, so I've cut out both of my strips, and I've also cut 2 rectangles in both the lining and the mesh. I cut my rectangles at about my hip measurement plus an inch. So both the rectangles, since my hip measurement is 40 inches, both my rectangles are the length of my skirt, which is 32 inches by 41 inches. That way, when they gather up, they should gather up quite nicely. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is need to make sure that we put the pockets on the right side of the skirt. So this one would be the left. I'm going to take one of these, and I'm one of my squares, and I am just going to pin it to my side piece. And then I'm just going to pin this one. I'm not going to pin the lining right now. So just going to pin it all the way down. Okay, so there's one side, and so then that would be the front, because that goes on the left. So then on the other side here, I would pin this one to this side. Actually, or do I have them backwards? Let me think. Okay, so yes, I had it backwards. Pockets always go towards the body, not away from the body. Okay, so I'm going to pin, the mesh really doesn't have a right or wrong side. So I'm just going to pin one edge of the mesh to that side there. That's going to be the back. So that's going to flip around to the back side and be pinned here. So let me do that. Okay, so I've pinned the back here, right sides together. I've just flipped it over so that I could see it. And now the front is going to be pinned just like I did the back here, but got to make sure to only pin it to like this little flap here and not pin it to the pocket, because if you do that, you're going to sew through the pocket, and then the pocket's going to be unusable. So basically we're just going to pin it, and I ended up cutting it a little bit there because I cut through too much, but I can fix that. So I'm just going to pin it, making sure that I only get the actual, I guess, stripe or pant part and not the pocket. See if I can get it to go. Zoom in just a little. So you want to make sure that you don't get that pocket part, that you just get the actual like stripe part on that. And you're going to pin that. I'm going to do the same thing to the other side, and then I am going to sew them all together with my seam allowance. I've chosen that 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, so that's the one I'm going to be using, and sew it all together, and then we'll move on to the lining. Okay, so I've sewn that to both sides, all the way around. Basically now I have a very large circle. So now I'm going to do the same thing with the lining. I'm going to sew the lining the same way that I sewed the mesh. So basically when you have a skirt under this side part here, you're not going to have any lining. The other way you could do it is to make the lining separate, sew the side seams together for a big circle, and then just attach it separately under here. I had originally thought about doing that, but then the issue is you're going to see more of the raw edge there, and you're going to see the pocket if you do it like that, versus if you put the lining in the same spot, then once you flip it over, it would hide all that. So I am going to go ahead, pin everything, sew it. I'll finish the edge with my serger. You can do a zigzag stitch or something if you want. And then we will discuss the gathering and the waistband. Okay, I did want to point out this real quick as I was pinning everything on. It dawned on me, I need to hem my lining before I sew it down, because otherwise if you sew it all the way down there, then when you go to hem, everything's going to have to be hemmed all together because it's all going to be stuck together. So I'm going to go ahead and hem this first. I'm probably going to do I don't know, probably a 1-inch double hem, so fold it under an inch, and then again an inch, top stitch that, and then I'll finish sewing. That way, when I go to hem, because I'll put it this way, I'm not going to hem this, because this mesh doesn't unravel, and so because of that, I probably won't hem this either. I'll probably just leave it the way it is. I may put a little fray check on the end just to make sure it doesn't unravel. But yeah, I'll do that. Go ahead and hem both squares of my lining, and then I'll continue sewing it down and finishing the edge. All right, so everything's sewn on. So now what I've done is I've run a gathering stitch just on the lining and mesh. So I did not run a gathering stitch across here. And a gathering stitch on both the front and the back. I also got a piece of 2-inch wide elastic as my waist measurement minus an inch. Overlapped it a little bit and sewed it together. This is going to be the waistband. Now I have divided this into quarters, and then also divided my skirt into quarters here. There's the fold line there, and then on the others. So what I'm going to do is pin this just over the top like that, so that the raw edges are towards the back, and I'm going to pin that in place. And I'm going to do that for each of the 4 sides. Now the reason I'm running a gathering stitch on here on the fabric is because it's an awful lot of fabric to have to stretch this to fit. So I'm going to gather up the fabric a little bit, about half, and then when I sew it on, I will stretch the elastic to make the other half fit. So let me get this one pinned on here, and then I'll kind of, okay, so I'm just going to pull the bottom thread up, and I did a 5 stitch length, which is the longest stitch length on my sewing machine. I didn't leave a long enough tail there. Let me see if I left a long enough tail. There we go. Yeah, leave a long tail, it's easier to pull. So I'm just going to gather up about halfway. Oops. Let me get this all pinned on, and then we can go to the gathers. Okay, so I have pulled up gathers to take it in about halfway what it was. So here is what it was before. That's the length it was, and I've gathered it about halfway. Okay, it still doesn't fit, but that's okay, because when we sew, we're gonna stretch this to fit. So the first thing I want to do is just knot off my thread so any of the gathering doesn't come out. And then I'm just going to kind of even out the gathering so that there's not like big clumps of just one, gathering and then some open space, okay? And then it's just a matter of, again, I'm just going to kind of eyeball the center and the center there and pin that. Then the center and the center there. I mean, if you're off a little bit, you're really not going to be able to tell once you stretch it. And I will be using a zigzag stitch to sew this on. That way when the elastic stretches, you won't break any stitches. Okay, so now, I mean, there's still some that doesn't match, but when I go, I'm just going to stitch like right around the edge with the zigzag, but I will stretch this as I'm stitching, and then it will fit in place. I'm going to do that all the way around the whole skirt. All right, so I got it finished up. It was a tad bit challenging doing the zigzag stitch, but I just took my time. I probably should have serged it before I put it on to finish the edges, but I didn't, and it'll be fine. But I just did my zigzag stitch there. So it is done. My workable pockets. Got it all pressed nice and neat. Just did a sewing stitch across there to hold it all into place. And let's see how it looks on. I love the way this turned out. I've already gotten so many compliments on it, and I hope this inspires you to get out and create some unique clothing. So happy